Hello, Sean.
Hi, Liv. How are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very good. It's a nice warm day, and I'm really enjoying that. So yeah, the winters are long and cold, so let's make the most of this good weather that we've got.
Exactly. That's a positive attitude.
Definitely so. Definitely so.
So, should we start with some introductions? Do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm Sean Riley. I'm a chartered occupational and coaching psychologist, and I'm registered with the Health and Care Professions Council. And I mostly work in the area of neurodiversity in the workplace. So it's late diagnosis or adults with neurodivergent conditions. And I provide support, training for managers, leaders in organizations, individual support. I carry out the diagnostics for dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and also screenings for ADHD and autism, and also make recommendations for reasonable adjustments, as well as being a coach as well. So I do provide the ongoing support, which, dare I say, sometimes sadly missing after diagnosis, where sometimes people are just left to get on with things. So, I am quite passionate about providing that support that we can do for individuals. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Sounds like you're great at providing that front to back support for neurodivergent individuals and their managers and organizations.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it is such a requirement, to raise the awareness of neurodivergence in the workplace, and also to maximize efficiency and talent that we've got. To have a diverse team and different ways of thinking is such an absolute bonus and a benefit to an organization if it's harnessed in the correct way. We've got so much talent there, and we can be more efficient. And that's what it's all about, and making people happy and keeping them in that workplace.
Yeah. And that actually ties into some of my background. So I'm Liv Blaney. I am a executive and neurodiversity coach, training facilitator, team coach, and also an author all across the areas from a leadership and management and neurodiversity perspective. So helping
Oh,
individuals, neurodivergent and neurotypical, to be their best in the workplace in whatever form that
yeah.
takes. But I guess I came at this from the perspective of organizations and managers can sometimes not have the tools or the support available in order to be the best possible support for
Mm.
their team members, or to get the most out of their team members, or to be the most productive, or frankly to have the most commercial impact either. And so that was my experience of corporate and industry life, and certainly has been my experience as a coach, that actually often well-meaning managers and leaders aren't set up in the right way to enable people to be at their best. So that's
Mm.
what I spend my time doing now. And I'm curious, how did you become an expert in this field? What was your pathway?
Oh gosh, my pathway to neurodiversity. I mean, I when I was completing my master's in occupational psychology, at the dissertation stage, my supervisor actually said to me, have you considered, potentially looking at doing some diagnostics in neurodivergence? And my answer to that was no, I haven't really thought about that. And she actually said that she felt that I had the temperament and the character to actually, enjoy that, but also be able to provide the support that was necessary. So she introduced me to a company that would carry out the training and also provide some of the work for me as well as an independent diagnostics consultant. So I did that, and I think it's safe to say that the rest is history. That I've just became passionate about this and continued to learn and learn as I went along. And I've picked up things and engaged with lots and lots of people and lots of organisations with this. So yeah, the passion's really growing, and I'm actually hoping to go in and do some more research a little bit later on in the year. I want to look at dyspraxia specifically because it seems to be one of the neurodivergent neurodevelopmental conditions that's sort of pushed to one side at times. And there's very little research in adult dyspraxia. There's very little research on what interventions can be used. So I think that's an important area to focus some research on that and get some more information test some of the interventions, and then we can help even more people.
Yeah, that's very true. I think it does get lost in the mix a little bit, dyspraxia. I had a similarly academic approach into things. So a couple of years ago, when I was working in corporate life and I was also coaching at the same time, I started to come across more and more examples of individuals who are neurodivergent, who were coming up against systemic and sometimes managerial challenges. And that meant that they either weren't getting promoted, or they weren't being developed, or they were being put in really unfair circumstances and situations, not by anyone's intentional practices, but by kind of accident, by people not really understanding what the situation was and what was going on for them. So I started hearing more and more stories, particularly from my coachees, about people getting made redundant when perhaps it was actually just a breakdown in trust and understanding between the manager and them that was really the challenge. So I started looking at neurodiversity, and when it came to, I've got a master's in coaching for behaviour change, and when it came to choosing a dissertation topic for my master's, I ended up starting to look at neurodiversity, and I happened to meet a vicar in the pub who ended up offering me to work with some of the young adults that he supported, some autistic young adults. And so we set up a coaching program for those autistic young adults and asked them about their experiences and what worked and what didn't work from a coaching perspective. And I could see from the impact that it had on those individuals, many of whom had been through the social care system in one way or another and had experienced multiple disadvantages, that actually coaching could really help people. And that's when I started getting really interested in actually how can coaches be more neuroinclusive to maximise the impact that coaching can have on neurodivergent clients across the board. So that's where I come from.
It's amazing, isn't it? You know, how something comes along that we don't always expect in that way, and it just really grabs hold of us and pulls us in, you know, and that's where the passion starts arising. And then I suppose we start asking more and more questions and just go forwards with the journey. Isn't it quite similar in both cases, I think, for both of us, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Sometimes you just need to roll with what life gives you and see where it takes you.
I don't think that's a bad way to take life at all.
So one of the things that I know we wanted to cover was about what neurodivergent means. And I think when I think about this, I think everyone is different. You know, I've got different hair color to you, your different height, weights, gender, all of these differences. And to me, neurological differences are another kind of difference that we need to factor in, just they're a bit more invisible than some of the other ones might be. And so for me, while everyone is, the whole population is neurodiverse, those individuals who are neurodivergent fall outside of what we would expect to be usual, which isn't language I like, but usual in some way. And that typically tends to then mean that they may well have been diagnosed with a neurodivergent condition like autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, or OCD, Tourette's, tics. I'm going to miss a couple. You're going to need to help me at some point. But yes, that's, to me, that's my definition of neurodivergent.
Yeah, I mean, and I certainly wouldn't disagree with that, you know, and like you said, you know, we are different in so many ways as a race, you know, the human race, I mean by that. And, you know, in order to break things down so that we can understand, you know, we have all these different sort of prisms and lenses that we look at things through. So, you know, again, it goes back to the old traditional bell curve that the neurotypical is the line that's right down the middle at the 50th percentile. And then going either way, that's where we get the divergence that comes into that. And then percentage wise, you know, the extremes, if you like, that's where the neurodivergence would sit in diagnosis terms and everything. So it is, you know, it's a way that we understand things. It's the way that we break things down because, you know, the world is complex. People are complex. You know, we're all different. But, you know, like you said, sometimes, you know, the invisible sort of traits, I suppose, really, or, you know, the way people think, you know, we can't always see that. It makes it just that little bit more difficult, you know, when we put them into a bracket to actually fully understand that because we can't see what we're dealing with sometimes. So we're looking for those specific behaviours and differences from that that sort of normative, if you like, which and again with you, we're all neurodiverse to an extent, because I would find it hard to believe that everyone sits at that 50th percentile. That's not really possible. So we're all scattered around on that bell curve at some point. Having traits associated with is another thing that we might not meet a diagnostic criteria, but it doesn't mean to say that we can't have some neurodivergent traits in certain areas, the way that we behave, or the way we think, our thought processes, and the way that we interact and engage with others.
Yeah, that's what makes the human race so beautiful, is that mix
I
of
absolutely
diversity.
agree. Yeah,
And that's what
absolutely.
makes teamwork so powerful as well.
Oh, fundamental. Yeah, absolutely. Having different ways of thinking, and whether that's the cognitive divergence, the neurodivergence, or just different characters and personalities in a team. If managed in the correct way, and if everyone engages, and if we have that psychological safety, and we use that term quite a lot, I think that's probably a topic for another conversation. We don't want to go too deep into that, but having that trust and that psychological safety, we can really shape a good, diverse team that can produce, so many good things, and can be so efficient just by, working together and complementing each other and supporting each other.
I think that's the key there, isn't it? It's the combination of the diversity and the inclusion of that diversity that is the thing that creates the improved productivity and morale and engagement. And sometimes where people have failed with teams is that they have created the diversity, or they've hired in the diversity, but the inclusion isn't there. And by nature, when there is difference, that creates the risk of conflict in whatever form of diversity it is. And so that's where team leaders, team managers really need to understand how to get the most out of their teams by creating that psychological safety and that inclusive environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, definitely.
I know one of the things that often comes up when I talk to people certainly about coaching, but also about managing and leading neurodivergent individuals, is how would you know that someone is neurodivergent? What are your thoughts about how to answer that particular question?
Yeah, well, that's a difficult one, because what I would say is avoid stereotypes, because we can't always identify straight away that someone is neurodivergent, because they might not disclose for fear of that retribution and discrimination. They may not have obvious traits in that way, so there's certain things in the media which, dare I say, there are some good things in the media currently as well that's raising awareness of neurodiversity and neurodivergence. But certainly in the past, Hollywood hasn't done us too many favors in some ways by portraying neurodivergent individuals in a certain way, which people pick up on and think, oh, that's the way everyone is who has autism, for example, or ADHD. It's always about the behavioral issues and that. And I think, well, that's absolutely not true. So it can be, quite difficult to actually, really identify someone who's neurodivergent. And I suppose, and probably the same for you, Liv, when you are coaching individuals, sometimes people present to me and they don't really know that they're neurodivergent. Certainly if they've been through an education system where there wasn't the facility to be diagnosed, or it hasn't really caused them too much concern, because again, neurodivergence is not related to intelligence. So they pass their exams, get on, with things, and go to university, and just continue through their life with some distress, dare I say, and some challenges, but they get through. So they think, well, this is what it's all about. So they might not know at that point. So it's something that over a period of time, certainly in that coaching relationship, which again is fundamentally based on that trust, that security that the individual has, and as coaches, we hold that psychological safety for the individual. It can actually arise, and we can start talking about things, and then we can start lining that up against potential traits, and we can have the discussion about the way that the traits are manifesting in the individual, and then we can build and think, well, actually, this individual, or we can talk with them, and the consensus could be that it may be autism, or it may be traits associated with ADHD there. So it is certainly that getting to know the individual and understanding the way that they're thinking and shaping that, can help us to pick up on whether there is neurodivergent tendencies or not.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I guess I would summarize it as I would always choose personalization over labels. So both as a
Yeah,
manager and as a coach. Actually,
yeah.
if you start with the individual first, what does the individual need? Where do they excel? What are their challenges? How can I support them? That's
Yeah,
a much
yeah.
stronger approach to go down
Agreed.
than actually what's the label, because the label then enables you, empowers you, but also fraudulently empowers you to make assumptions. And
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes those assumptions are based on historic perceptions, or not
Absolutely.
every neurodivergent individual is the same. Not every person with OCD is the
Absolutely.
same. So the label
Yeah.
itself doesn't really help you. It should still always be about the person who's in front of you. What do they need? And being able to set up the relationship so that you can ask the questions that you need to ask to
Yeah.
enable
Yeah.
them to be at your best and enable you to partner with each other
Yeah.
to both be at your best.
Definitely. And like you say, the bottom line is supporting the individual irrespective of any labels. And I think we also need to consider the comorbidity as well. So whilst they may have a label, it's likely that they would have other neurodivergent conditions that go with that. And there's also the crossover as traits as well. So, multiple labels, if you like, in that way. So let's focus on the concerns of the individual. Let's focus on the problems and the challenges that they might be having and help them going forwards. I totally agree. It's the best way to go forwards with the individuals.
Yeah. And I think also, to add to that, it's also about understanding what their particular strengths and capabilities are. Like, going back to the
Yeah.
diversity point, we're all
Ooh,
good and less good at different things. I could never
definitely.
be a racing car driver. There are many other things that I can't do as well, not just racing car driving.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah,
and understanding that means that actually, there are tasks that my previous bosses, should never have assigned me, because actually they're not things I'm ever going to be good at.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
same goes for everyone. So it's about understanding strengths as well as challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, historically, we've always, sort of focused with the appraisal systems is looking for areas for development and I think that doesn't surprise anyone, with these systems. And I think it's probably about time that we actually really focused on the strengths and also accept, like you said, Liv, that there are some things that we're not particularly good at. We may not have the motivation to potentially be good at it, and also, the skill set and everything that goes with it. We just don't want to put the effort in to be good at it. There's no point, because we're so good at other things, or there are things that we do have strength in. Then optimize those strengths, and I'm actually a strong believer in the workplace of peer-to-peer mentoring as well. So when we have a team, when we have that level of trust and we have, peer support, we can actually complement each other. So if one person is very good at one thing and the other person is very good at the other thing, then they can support each other in the things that they may have some challenges with, and have that sort of mutual trust that goes there. So, I'm a real big fan of establishing teams where that sort of system is in place.
Yeah, I love that. And I worked with a neurodivergent leader recently who,
Mm,
one of the challenges that he faced was around organization and time management.
yeah,
And actually,
yeah.
what was really interesting was we talked about actually how can he create his team so that he can go and do the things that he was great at relationship building, great at coming up
Mm-hmm.
with creative ideas, great at bigger picture vision, less good at the time management and organization, but he hired a team and lent into their strengths of organization and time management to help complement him.
Exactly.
So he could do
Yeah,
the things that he wanted
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and was good at.
yeah,
And they would help support him with the things that they were good at. And that's true teamwork, right? That's the way
yeah.
that things should be.
Oh, absolutely. And what that leader is demonstrating there is that appropriate vulnerability, being honest with his team, and not trying to hide away and say, oh, I'm not good at time management, but I'm not going to tell anyone about that, because it soon unravels and it becomes challenging. So he's been appropriately vulnerable and opened up to the team and asked for that support. And, that gathers respect and trust. Because if someone is open, if they're confident and comfortable enough to do that with their team, then it demonstrates, a good confident character and someone that is willing to support others. in that way, you know, so asking for that. So I think that's a really, really good example, give the Liv, of how a team can work efficiently and effectively.
I also sometimes find, certainly from a neurodivergent individual's perspective, but also from a broader team coaching perspective, sometimes it can be helpful to use a tool, and there are many different strengths-based approaches that map out everyone's capabilities, and then thinks about actually how do they work well as a team. And actually, when you start to see patterns, you see how people can add value to teams based on the strengths that they've got versus others, and everyone can kind of normalize the language around what everyone brings to the table, and that can be so powerful to help to bring a team together and help them to think differently about their co-workers.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so a lot of it is about understanding, you know, the cognitive process and how people think. It's being open, it's being honest, and I suppose it's that individuals are able to talk about their needs, if you like, in that way. You know, sort of when do they feel overwhelmed? You know, are there any situations when they may feel overwhelmed? Is there anything in the environment that's impacting them in that way? You know, and to be open about that, it means that, like you say, you know, we can look at the differences in people and we can get them to work together, and it's all that complementary behaviours that we draw from that.
Yeah. I know one of the things that helps to set team culture is around meetings, and the article that accompanies this particular conversation is around actually how do you make meetings more neuro-inclusive. And for me, that's key, because actually meetings set team culture. It's when the tribe comes together to play together. And so actually making sure that meetings are neuro-inclusive is really important. I mean, in the article, I talk about how, you know, personalisation is key, making sure that you understand your team members and what they need, because not everyone is the same, not everyone has the same requirements. One person may respond very differently to being invited to comment in a meeting than another one would. So one person might hate it, another person might love it and find that they feel valued. And then some other things that I talk about through that article, things like kind of sharing the agenda and the materials in advance, really simple things that help everyone to be at their best and everyone to prepare for meetings. It's just surprising how often you arrive at a meeting and people haven't even really thought about what the agenda is or what they're trying to get out of it.
Absolutely.
One thing that I read years ago was about how actually if you can't shape your agenda in terms of the questions that you're trying to answer, then you really shouldn't be having a meeting. And I thought that was quite powerful in terms of how you might tee up a meeting to make it clear what you need from people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I totally get that. And it's also, you know, not having the impromptu meetings just for the sake of it, if you like. And I totally understand, and I totally get it that sometimes there is a requirement for an impromptu meeting. But be clear as to why that meeting is taking place and what the outcomes are going to be from that one, because it, you know, obviously disrupts quite a lot of people, or it could potentially disrupt. And if there's this unknowing, then it can increase the anxiety of all individuals, and not just the neurodivergent individuals as well. So, you know, so certainly looking at, you know, that sort of thing is having that good timetable of meetings. And I think the other thing, you know, to touch on is, you know, with regards to like the dialogue and the communication styles in meetings, is be clear in what is being said and what is being asked for. And, you know, I am a fan of humor. I have no problems with that at all. But, you know, sometimes the traditional sarcasm that falls in sometimes, and, you know, we think, oh, it's just banter. Yes, maybe. But, you know, the use of sarcasm actually blurs the actual requirement, you know, the actual communication that's being used. So, like I say, I think humour is perfectly placed in the working environment at the right time, and with a really good trusting team that understand that humour. But we do have to be cautious, you know, in meetings, that the communication is clear and we don't pollute it with elements of sarcasm, with humour, even with, you know, extensive language that might not be understood by individuals. We've got to be clear. We've got to be concise.
Yeah, I think there's so I'm a big fan of plain English, so stripping things back and saying
Yeah.
things as they are in a quite clean and direct way, although I appreciate that's a cultural nuance as well. But the other thing that I often think of is, for some neurodivergent individuals, they can take things very logically. And so
Yes. Yeah.
phrases like letting the cat out of the bag or smashing it out of the park, she can be incredibly confusing, right? Why was the cat
Yes.
in the bag in the first place? It
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
so, if you want to be an inclusive leader, it's also about catching yourself to be really
Yeah.
straightforward with your language. It doesn't
Yeah.
just benefit neurodivergent individuals, but it does make it easier for everyone to process. And that's
Clarity.
really what you're
Yeah.
going for, right? If the aim of
Yeah.
the meeting is
Totally.
to get everyone engaged.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's just that clarity that we want there. And I think the other one that I would add, and it's with regards to meetings, or I suppose even in interviews, or sort of appraisal times or anything, is the multi-part question, which is my one of my pet hates, I think, really, because I don't think I've ever heard anyone answer a multi-part question without asking what the second part of the question was as well. And we do sometimes sneak them in there, for whatever reason, I don't know. Just ask two questions, allow someone to process, and then answer, and then ask the next question. If it follows on, that's great, but you don't have to put them together.
Yeah, completely. So when you've been working with managers, what are some of the common pitfalls that you see?
Yeah, I would say, the common pitfalls are the lack of understanding of neurodiverse conditions, and that, as I said before, it could be from those assumptions of traits as to what neurodivergence is, and how these traits manifest. And I suppose it goes back to, when mental health awareness became more prominent as well, where there's sort of like this reticence, this sort of fear to engage with people because we think, oh, somebody might be different. And the answer is that, yes, all of us are different. So it's sort of like the fear to step over that line, because there's that sort of element of like, oh, I don't really know how to manage this situation. I haven't been in this situation before, and a little bit of a lack of confidence as well. So it's certainly based on those assumptions of the conditions.
Yeah, I would I agree with you, but I think there's a larger issue, which is actually you can have more difficult conversations with people and you can raise challenging topics and you can get things wrong if you feel like you've built the trust and rapport with them that
Agreed.
enables you to get things done. As a manager, enables you to get things done and enables
Yeah.
them to get things wrong. And I think often as managers, we are so busy trying to get things done and to manage upwards and to manage downwards that actually we forget that actually at the core of it is about building a relationship with an individual. And
Yeah.
if you can get the basics right, the trust and rapport and understanding who that individual is as a person and personalizing your approach to them, then you're in a really good place. Even if you do slip up, say the wrong thing or take the wrong approach, actually then you can have a discussion about it that otherwise
Yeah.
you wouldn't be anywhere near having. So for me, some of the foundations of management get skipped in the mess of trying to get things done and over the line on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah, because there is that expectation. There's key performance indicators and all this sort of thing, and we get pushing along, and it's difficult to look at a team, of size and think, well, okay, so everyone's different. Oh, complexities are dropping in there. So yeah, absolutely, and having that level of trust in a team. And certainly developing that culture of, like a learning culture that we have as well, where it's okay to potentially say the wrong thing, but it's not okay to say the wrong thing multiple times, so we can learn from that, we can have the discussion, and then we learn, we can get things right, and we can develop together and learn from each other.
Yeah, I think that learning mentality is key, right? Having the ability to ask, okay, so what did you learn from that experience? What can we do better next time? Make it okay to not fail. I don't really like the word fail, but to learn from experiences and move forwards is really important. And acknowledging as a leader and manager your own role in that, your own sense of vulnerability and capability and limitations to capability can also be really
Absolutely.
important.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so.
when I think about people who've done really good work in the neurodiversity space in terms of welcoming neurodivergent talent, I think of people like Ernst & Young, who set up a neurodiversity centre of excellence, helping to support neurodivergent talent. I think SAP have done a really good job. They set up, they changed some of their hiring policies and approaches, really helped to move things forwards and be more inclusive. Microsoft have done some fantastic work as well in this space. Actually, interestingly, the one that I find that I've seen most recently that was quite impactful is a company called Harbour Energy, who have set up some employee resource groups to help neurodivergent individuals come together, help share and support each other. And they've also set up neurodivergent friendly spaces in the office, so having quiet areas. And they've also, one of the things that often holds neurodivergent individuals back is recruitment policies, because if you're neurodivergent, and you don't necessarily want to disclose, perhaps you might have had a bad experience in a previous workplace, then actually having neurodivergent friendly and welcoming recruitment policies can really make a world of difference to how warmly you feel towards a company before you then interview. And I know you mentioned the point about kind of double questions, right? We often do that in interviews as well, and we do that on application forms, and that can just be incredibly, that can be a lot for anyone to deal with. So
absolutely. And you mentioned the application form. I think in the traditional recruiting process, the first thing that someone will do is fill out an application form. So, potentially that is cutting back on the huge amount of talent that could come forwards right at that beginning point. So to actually look at other ways that we can actually get the information from individuals, or understand that it's not for everyone to actually complete that form, then it's just opening that talent pool. And likewise within the interviews as well is, potentially allowing people to have some sort of familiarity if they're going to a face-to-face interview. If they suffer and have dyspraxia, they may not like going to unfamiliar places because of the the orientation that goes with that, and the planning that goes with that. So it might be a simple video of the building that they go into, show them the entrance, the waiting area, etc., and that just to calm things for them and just make them feel better. And when I say them, I don't actually mean the neurodivergent individuals. I mean, why don't we just allow everyone to have some of these adjustments? When we say neuroinclusive, it means that we want to incorporate this for everyone, because even if someone is labeled as neurotypical, doesn't mean to say that they wouldn't appreciate or might not need some help in certain areas. So basically, we're making a more efficient process, a more efficient system. So we've got a wider choice of talent that's coming through, and we can select the best people for the job rather than funneling them out and filtering them out prior to getting to that point.
Yeah. And I think on that topic, one of the things that I've seen more companies doing, although still not enough, is offering people interview questions ahead of time so that actually they can prepare. I think it was Tesco's or Sainsbury's recently John Lewis, who list all of their interview questions on their website, which is a great way of actually testing someone's capabilities and skills rather than testing their ability to respond in the moment to quick fire questions, which is really what the traditional interview approach is all about. So actually changes like that can benefit everyone, because everyone can prepare appropriately and be tested on the skills that are relevant for the job, not their ability to answer those questions quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Their skills of interview, could surpass their skills of actually being able to do the job, like you said there. So it's always making sure that the interview is relevant to the job that they're going to be doing, and not going out of those parameters. Yeah.
And it's funny because actually when I think back and I think about some of the people that I hired who were brilliant at interviews but rubbish at the job, and there were certainly people who were rubbish at interviews who would be brilliant at the
and
job.
great at the job.
It's about getting the right format for the assessment so that it actually works properly.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely.
Amazing. Well, I know we're coming to the end of the conversation. I'm wondering what you're taking away as a key highlight from our conversation today.
Oh, well, the key highlight for me is always, more awareness of neurodivergence, you know, because there is so much talent that we have in the working environment right at our fingertips, and we just need to unlock that, you know, so have the confidence to move forwards and embrace this. You know, it's nothing to be frightened about at all. But yeah, certainly, you know, my key takeaway is making more and more people aware of this, you know, and spreading the good practice as well within organisations.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I would also add that, you know, we are seeing more companies doing more of it, but actually over time that's going to become even more of a business imperative, because some of
Yeah,
the roles that take in the bog standard human approaches are going to be taken by AI. And so it actually
yeah,
becomes more about the breadth and creativity of your human workforce.
agreed.
And to get breadth and creativity, you need to include every form of diversity that there is out there, and make sure that you've got the policies and processes and managers in place to truly include that talent as well.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I totally agree with that, Liv.
Perfect. Well, look, it was lovely chatting.
Absolutely. Yeah, likewise.